The young divers, Mike and Jeff, had decided to see a gigantic cruise ship that had crashed on the land 10 years earlier, so they started out early in the morning. Not that the ship seemed particularly sturdy, and who knew what they may have found inside. Welcome to USA Stories channel. Do not forget to subscribe and activate the bell button to receive all new updates. Now let's go to the story. If something were to happen to one of them while they were out there, it may be pretty dangerous, and there was no way they could make it back to the shore in time. However, Jeff ignored her advice and started looking for a way into the structure. From the moment they boarded the cruise ship, they sensed the ominous atmosphere that surrounded them. The sound of the water slapping against the tank bottom and the cracking of the metal frame were the only sounds audible. The two of them said, "Wow, exactly same. I think we should head back," Mike said, but Jeff was already out of the room. They started off in the large, airy main hall, which included a massive staircase that led to the upper decks and high ceilings all around. They then continued on to the cabins. As Jeff and Mike strolled through the deserted corridors of the ship, they heard an odd noise. Mike was startled and asked Jeff whether he had heard it too, but Jeff shrugged and continued on. Jeff showed interest in venturing farther below deck to explore the ship's lowest levels after a short period. Their goal was at the top of a short stairway, but it was completely dark. The sound was far softer than a muffled scream, and it thoroughly terrified off Jeff and Mike. With fear in their eyes, they fixed one another with stares. They strolled for a short while before arriving at their destination. Knowing that there was no way for them to reach the bottom of the ship, they were perplexed as to why there was a dead end. In the corner, Mike saw a door. Jeff grabbed the doorknob and tugged as hard as he could to unlock the stuck door. He listened intently with his ear to the door. "There is no doubt that the sound is emanating from within this space," he said, moving to stand next to Mike and doing the same, straining his ear to the door. Suddenly, they heard something that almost made their hearts stop beating, which surprised them. A boat was drawing nearer to the ship, and they could hear the muffled sounds of men fighting with one another. It sounded as though they were boarding the cruise ship together. "Ship," Mike murmured, before adding, "I knew this was a bad idea." They understood how urgent their circumstances were. They raced back to the stairway, only to hear a set of rumbling footsteps from below, just as they were about to start climbing. They whirled around, retrieved their flashlights, and ducked behind the stairway so they wouldn't be seen. As the men moved down the metal ladder, they got closer and closer, and they held their breath in anticipation. The ship echoed with their heavy footsteps. 3 men descended the stairs and approached the locked door directly. When the men opened the door, Mike could see what was going on inside since they were being watched from where they were standing. Abruptly, the low cry grew considerably louder. "We have to get out of here as soon as possible," he said to himself. Those men not only outnumbered Mike and Jeff, but they were also significantly bigger and stronger than them. In addition, Mike noticed that one of them had a pistol, which added a great deal of difficulty to an already challenging position. After they agreed that it could take some time to contact the police, Mike plucked up the guts and agreed to accompany Jeff in peering behind the closed door to observe what the men were doing. They moved cautiously toward the exit, paying close attention to the men's talk as they did so. His heart felt like it was about to burst out of his chest, and he couldn't wait for the cops to arrive. Quietly, Jeff said, "All right, I'm getting ready." With a hasty retreat into the darkness, Jeff let Mike's eyelids open. After being left behind in the room, the man bolted out the door and made his way toward the stairs. Mike and Jeff could only hear the muted sounds of footsteps as they hurried for the chamber as soon as they could emerge from the shadows. Mike was going to follow Jeff when he heard the other men emerge from the basement. Jeff had pulled open the massive door and gone into the building. Mike became frozen, unable to think of anything to do. Jeff could see that the other man and the woman were fighting physically, and he could hear a woman sobbing, but it sounded like she had something trapped in her mouth. Jeff and Mike made a beeline for the woman. She was restrained, duct tape covering her lips, and forced to bind herself to a chair. Mike had unlocked her hands and Jeff had loosened her legs. Even though they were far away, they could still hear the police sirens. The woman was too fragile to stand on her own, so they helped her. The cops were shocked by the scenario they had been called to when they did eventually arrive. They took quick turns barging into the building and taking the two guys into custody. The woman was successfully taken to a secure area, but they needed Mike and Jeff to go with them to the police station. At the police station, Jeff and Mike were questioned and asked to provide a detailed description of everything that had happened. They were afraid they would be arrested by the authorities for being on the ship when they weren't permitted to be there in the first place. But the cops were relieved when the response was quite different from what they had expected. Because of the praise they received for their bravery, Jeff and Mike were released from custody. It became out later that the woman they had saved was everything but ordinary. She was the governor's daughter and had spent the last few days in captivity. By now, the person had already asked for money and then abruptly stopped communicating. The woman is probably not going to survive the night. The governor praised the young men and handed them each a sizable reward for their valiant efforts in saving his daughter because of Jeff and Mike's fast thinking. Both Jeff and Mike were still in disbelief at what had transpired. It was difficult for them to believe that this was truly happening to them. One morning, I'm so hungry and my mom doesn't wake up, the terrified child said to the cops. Sarah, 4, awoke to see her mother was still asleep. Her mother always got up before her, so this was really odd for her. She did everything to rouse her mother up, but to no avail. Sarah started to question whether there was a problem. She called the only number she could recall, but her mother was still asleep as the hours went by. A small girl who had called 911 to report that her mother hadn't woken up all day was the target of a search by a female police officer and her crew. That evening, when the authorities broke into her home, the situation took a terrible turn. The police station's personnel were busier than normal that day, looking into a murder. Every hotline in the city was full of calls that were diverted to different crises. An unusual call from a small girl then occurred. 911, what's your emergency? An unsettling stillness stretched across the backdrop while the dispatcher replied, and then there was a loud wheezing sound on the receiver. I need to eat, a small child said. Mommy doesn't wake up all day. And she started crying. Where are you? I'm not sure. If I'm in trouble, Mommy told me to call 911, the child said, her voice trembling. The girl was then asked to provide further information about her location by the dispatcher. Calm down, and what's your name? Sarah. Sarah, can you tell me your address? There was a solemn quiet before Sarah provided the dispatcher her previous address, but she didn't remember where she was at the time. Sarah, could you please let me know where you are right now? Could you explain it? Despite not knowing the address, the little child managed to provide the officer with visual cues as to where she was at that moment. Outside, I can make out large gray homes. A large irate dog is barking outside. Outside are woods and a damaged gate. Okay, Sarah, continue where you are. Help is being dispatched immediately. After then, the information was sent to Officer Linda and her group. They set off right away to find the young girl and reach the first place she provided. After marching to the address, the police searched the area for any clues that might fit the girl's description, but they found nothing at all. When Linda knocked on the door, no one picked her up. Peeping through the glass window, she observed that the interior was dusty and gloomy, as if it had been vacant for a very long time. After checking with the neighbors, Linda discovered that a guy, his wife, and a small child called Sarah used to reside there. Do you know where they are now? Linda inquired. No, policeman. A guy said to Linda, Mr. Jake's wife and children fell into extreme poverty 6 months ago after he passed away in an accident. They were evicted by the landlord for non-payment of rent. Although I am unsure of their address, a buddy of mine reported seeing them 12 miles away in a destitute neighborhood. Linda headed off for that location, following the hints. The region was without electricity, making matters worse as it grew darker. Linda called out to a fellow cop, "Hush 1 second," as she heard a dog barking faintly not far from where they were. She remembered Sarah telling her about a dog that would not stop barking in the area around her. That might be the case. Let's head in that direction. Linda told her group to follow her, and they eventually came to a modest, run-down home. In order to see clearly, Linda switched on the flashlight and saw a shadow of someone standing close to the window. When she peered nearer, she spotted a small child screaming and pleading for assistance. A stray dog was running toward the police and barked non-stop outside. With haste, Linda grabbed a stone and threw it at the dog, frightening it away. She then pried open the door and went inside, making few assumptions about what else may be inside. "Hey, it's okay, don't cry," Linda consoled Sarah as she raced to her in tears. The girl appeared famished. "I need to eat. Mommy isn't waking up," she repeated again and over. After putting Sarah in the car, Linda brought her outside. "Give her some cookies, please," she assured her crew. "I'll be right back," and then returned inside to find out where Sarah's mother was. She looked everywhere in the home for the woman, but she was unable to locate her. Linda continued searching and discovered a basement entryway. Sarah's mother was comatose on the floor when she entered. When Linda arrived at the scene and tried to rouse the woman, she felt as though her body was chilly. Sarah's mom had passed away. As soon as officers barged in, Linda called emergency services and social workers. An ambulance arrived a short while later and removed the woman's body for an autopsy. Since Linda had been under the impression that her mother was sleeping, she was unsure of how to break the news to Sarah. "How do I tell her her mother's dead?" Linda pondered. "Mommy, where are they taking my mommy?" Sarah took off after the ambulance. In an attempt to console her, Linda halted and gave her a strong hug. "Mommy will be all right, sweetie. Be a nice girl and pay attention to my advice." "No, I'd rather visit my mother. Get away from me," Sarah sobbed and held her tiny stuffed animal. Shortly after, social services informed Linda that the daughter would be placed in foster care. The police officer didn't like the notion for some reason, and it bothered her to consider the effect it would have on Sarah, 5, when she found out her mother had died. "No, I'm going to bring the kid home tonight. She needs to eat, tidy up, and relax. Tomorrow I'll take her to the shelter," Linda urged. Linda drove Sarah home that evening. "My God, darling, who is this?" When Linda's husband Jacob answered the door and saw that Linda had a sleeping Sarah in her arms, he was taken aback. "Honey, I'll tell you everything, but not right now. I'm worn out. Can we have our meal first?" Later that evening, Linda told Jacob the whole story. "We still don't know how she passed away. Is the girl aware of this?" Jacob inquired. "No, I'm not sure how to inform her. Still, she believes her mother is doing well at the hospital. When she learns the truth, her heart will shatter. Oh dear." "But how long do we keep her with us?" Jacob inquired. That evening, after Sarah had gone to sleep, Linda had a weird thought. "Darling, I was thinking, why don't we adopt Sarah?" she said. "We have spent a great deal of time trying to conceive. What's wrong with my body is unknown to me. I'm unable to conceive despite the testing being clear of issues." It found out that Linda and Jacob were infertile for a number of years. They made every effort to conceive, but in vain. Linda had even given up on having children at one time and was concentrating only on her work. She assumed she would never become pregnant since she was always depressed and tired. A few months later, Sarah was adopted by Jacob and Linda, who celebrated their happiness with a grandiose party for friends and relatives. The party hall erupted in laughter, and Jacob called for a toast. "I believed that meeting Linda was the happiest day of my life," he said. "However, I was in error. The moment I saw my wife rocking a small wonder to sleep, I was overjoyed." "Honey, can we be her parents?" was the question she posed to me. I was unable to resist the joy of becoming a father. "Happy little family of 3, cheers." No, honey, wait, not 3, Linda abruptly cut off to a surprised Jacob. "We're going to be a happy little family of 4, she said, passing him an envelope with a test result that was positive. Jacob was the happiest guy on earth and could not believe what he saw. Linda's prayers were magnificently fulfilled just in time. "Happy little family of 4, everyone." With floods of happiness streaming from his eyes, Jacob lifted a toast. "Take a look at her. She is a tiny angel in need of love and guidance from her parents. She'll be offered for adoption, and she'll be taken in by an unknown couple. How about we adopt her? She truly is a lovely little miracle. How do you feel?" Jacob stared at Sarah, who was sound sleeping between them, thinking about what Linda had said. He recognized that this was the happiness he had been waiting for his entire life when he sensed their purity and presence eliminate the emptiness in their lives. The small act of kindness you perform makes someone who is grieving feel better. After learning that Sarah was an orphan and had lost her mother, Linda brought her home and gave her comfort. She later adopted Sarah because she desired to nurture her in a family surrounded by loving and supportive parents. Love, compassion, and miracles will rise from a compassionate heart that reaches down to uplift others. Because Linda did not want to give Sarah an orphan's life, she adopted Sarah. After several unsuccessful tries, she fell pregnant because of her kindness and affection for the young child, which gave her hope. Family is about someone who holds your hand and pulls you out of the dark. It has nothing to do with blood or DNA. Jacob came to see that family and children are about more than just blood and biological ties. They are about love and support when Linda convinced him to adopt Sarah. His brow wrinkled as he studied the two pictures that were before him. After that, he hurried to locate their blood work on their medical files. It was nonsensical. As Brianna and her sister observed, the doctor's eyes continued to enlarge in shock. "What is going on here?" he whispered. He gazed at them with a sudden, almost fearful expression. There was a unique affinity between Brianna Dean and her twin sister Brittany. Although they were the closest twins they had ever met, they tended to keep their romantic interests to themselves until they were certain that things were serious. For the most part, everything worked out beautifully, but this time, Brianna wished she had spoken out sooner. The females were distinct individuals with distinct preferences, peculiarities, and mindsets. One such instance was that, although Brittany enjoyed flying, Brianna was afraid of it, which made going on trips difficult. When they were very small, Brittany recalled one especially terrifying hospital visit. All she knew was that while their parents were screaming at the physicians for not understanding what they were doing, the two of them were in excruciating pain and were having difficulty breathing. The twins' mistrust of medical experts was born after that, and it would be put to the test sooner than they anticipated. In Twinsburg, Ohio, at a twins festival, Brianna met her future husband. Josh Saulers was his name, and he had a twin named Jeremy. While Josh and Brianna were having a romantic moment, Brittany and Jeremy were chatting away. It was time to inform Brittany that she had finally met the one after they quickly fell in love. However, Brittany was not without her own secret. As she told her sister everything about Josh Saulers, Brianna saw the look of surprise and wonder change on her sister's face. When she returned the favor and revealed that she had been dating his twin brother, Jeremy, and that things had also become serious, her response didn't make much sense. The girls' dreams included moving into the same house as all four of them and having a white wedding. They would soon discover that this wouldn't be the fairy tale they had hoped for, though, as they had some work to do first. They needed to go see the physician. Their pulse raced as they saw the doctor enter, his expression slightly frowning. Was the news unfavorable? Being in their late 30s, Brianna and her sister made the decision to get a fertility checkup. They were taken aback by the doctor's remarks when they revealed to him that they were also dating identical twins, even though it was only a precaution. The doctor advised them not to create a family with their unconventional partners, even though they were fertile. However, Brianna and Brittany refused to listen. Soon later, Josh and his twin Jeremy simultaneously proposed to Brittany and Brianna. They also did everything jointly, in accordance with how the two sets of twins had spent their lives. After getting married, they jointly purchased a home. Even though everything appeared to be going well, Brianna's attention was always focused on the doctor's stern warning. When Brittany and her sister Brianna became engaged to another set of identical twins, it made headlines. After the story went viral, TLC proposed to cover the whole cost of the wedding in exchange for the right to record and broadcast the ceremony. The years building up to this particular day were very different from the amazing event that took place. As Brianna married her twin sister and closest friend, who were standing by her, she had butterflies in her stomach and started to cry. The amazing bliss persisted throughout the honeymoon. Naturally, it didn't take long for them to become pregnant. But the wonderful news was soon offset by an unpleasant fact. She wished she had remained to hear the doctor's advice as she clutched her swelling stomach in her hands. However, what was so crucial that he dissuaded them from becoming parents? When Brittany miscarried, She was 3 months along, and Brianna was 4 weeks behind her. She was afraid she might experience the same thing. After all, their bodies were identical. The wait was agonizing, but it turned out as expected. Brianna miscarried at the exact same time as her sister, following in her footsteps. Despite the heartbreaking setback, they remained unfazed. Less than 6 months went by before Brianna and Brittany were pregnant once more. Their pregnancy went more smoothly this time, and they saw their doctor more frequently. But here was another warning for them. They listened as the physician reiterated how unusual this circumstance truly was, and how little they actually understood the implications of such a medical abnormality. Opposite their group sat the doctor. "Ladies, I believe I advised you to come see me before deciding to have children." Anger raised the hairs on the back of Brianna's neck. She shot back, "No, you told our mother that." With a shake of his head, he took out a folder. It was the medical history of both her and Brittany. He continued by using a variety of medical jargon terms like testing, health, prenatal preparation, and others. The doctor continued by explaining that there was a probability that she and her sister's unborn child may inherit the same genetic defects due to their prior genetic difficulties and the upcoming testing on their spouses. Put succinctly, their children may be just as unwell as the girls had been as infants. The doctor remarked, "It's obviously your body and your choice. I only wish you could have come so we could have done a better job of preparing. All we can do now is keep a close eye and exercise caution." The physician then examined their scans. What did he see? "Is everything in order?" Brianna inquired. The doctor's mind abruptly stopped racing. He sighed deeply, his eyes widening in shock. The twins were sitting next to the doctor, who took a chair and began to explain what the test results were starting to reveal. Brianna and Brittany are merely cousins, despite the fact that their respective infants are from 2 separate moms and dads. This implies that although if Brianna and Brittany's children have different parents, genetically speaking, they will always be complete biological siblings to each other as long as they stay with their husbands. This is like winning the lotto for an OB doctor. It's truly that uncommon, their physician said. Even yet, all they could do was take turns lying in bed. Brianna went into labor first, 8 months and 2 weeks later, and Brittany, in typical twin form, felt her water break a few hours later. Separation was, however, the toughest part. Taking hold of her husband's arm, she gave him one more shove. In the birthing room, there were sobs. She knew her sister was suffering somewhere. All the harsh recommendations and cautions had been disregarded by them. That was their decision, and their life. She was overjoyed to find that both infants were absolutely healthy, even though there was a considerable danger involved. They wouldn't have to endure the same suffering since they had won the DNA lottery. But when they cuddled their small babies, they both decided that before having any more, they would consult a doctor. Knowing that their children will have siblings made Brianna and Brittany and their spouses very happy, especially because the kids will be growing up in a home with 4 parents. When others learned of the twins' extraordinary tale, they were not as delighted as the twins. They agreed to be interviewed by reporters and journalists in a rush, but as the news and divergent viewpoints spread quickly, so did the controversy. After seeing how unusual the Dean sisters' wedding was, TLC decided to run the whole documentary, Our Twinsane Wedding, which chronicled the twins' nuptials. The theme of their wedding was Twice Upon a Time, and the clergymen who married the identical twin spouses were also twins. The quartet is now more well-known than ever, thanks to the recent announcement of the new members of the family. The very intimate marriage and lifestyle choices of Brianna and Brittany were seen negatively by some. The fact that adult couples lived together under one roof and intended to raise their children together also struck them as very peculiar and bizarre. However, it made sense to Brianna and Brittany for a variety of reasons. It just so happens that Jeremy and Josh, as well as Brianna and Brittany, work at the same legal company, making their commutes to work together convenient. The twins are inseparable, and neither pair could bear the thought of being separated from the other. Having to travel back and forth from each other's houses conserved gasoline as well. It's a rather unorthodox system, to be sure, but it appears to work for them. Nothing could be better in life for Brianna, her sister, and their spouses. They didn't let unfavorable comments get to them, even though there were always detractors lurking about to voice their disapproval of their lifestyle choices. Despite the fact that Brianna and Brittany are quite transparent about their decisions, the topic of whether they ever become confused comes up. People always question the ladies during interviews if the couples have ever been confused or kissed by the incorrect twin. Are they ever confused? However, the females quickly clarify the situation. This has never happened before. Brittany has even gone so far as to remark that it's strange that people even consider these things. It's not only that Brittany and Brianna want to support one another in raising their kids as a multi-parent family. In fact, they intend to become pregnant simultaneously, which will need a lot of preparation and some luck. If there is any more symmetry to be found, there is something more that Jeremy and Josh have in common with Brianna and Brittany, outside their acute awareness of the distinct lifestyles they have chosen to lead and of the opinions of others. Similar to Jeremy, Brianna was born first in her twinhood, but Brittany and Josh were born second. The two sets of twins appear to have been meant for one another from the start, despite being true soulmates who are identical in every way. Maybe that's why Brittany found Jeremy attractive and Brianna found Josh appealing. They seem to have an innate sense of which twin most closely resembled them. It may seem too good to be true if you read it in a book, but that is the case. The Solar couples had their childhood fantasies come true, and it's very amazing that anything like this even happened. Manny, Carlos, and Alyssa's kid had a wonderful vacation in the Netherlands. Being that this was their first family trip, they were all rather excited. After they had taken a seat, Carlos tried to fall asleep by sitting down and closing his eyes. Nevertheless, Manny was eager to get on board and view the cockpit. He didn't want to sit still just yet. The flight crew was just getting ready and the final passengers were aboard, but the pilots were glad to tour Manny around the cockpit in short order. Prior to their departure, Alyssa made the decision to use the restroom while her kid was receiving a quick tour. She felt the plane move as she closed her eyes and inhaled deeply. When the jet finally gained altitude, she opened her eyes once again and looked at the person next to her, but her heart missed a beat. When Alyssa noticed the vacant seat between her husband and the window, her eyes widened in dismay. Carlos was shaken awake by her. She questioned him, her voice laced with fear and desperation. "Where is Manny?" Her question surprised Carlos, who woke up with a sulky expression. "What are you trying to say?" He said, "He was with you." They had to acknowledge that he wasn't on board when they eventually asked the flight attendant, "Where did he go?" From here, there was nothing they could do. While her thoughts were racing, Carlos caught her by the shoulders. Trying to seem certain, he continued, "No point in panicking." He went on to say that they could conduct study throughout the trip and make sure their strategy was ready for landing. So the parents wasted no time in getting to their location when they did. Carlos phoned the American police to report what had transpired as soon as they had service. In the meantime, Alyssa made a call to airport security to inquire about their son's whereabouts, and they revealed something quite shocking. The security guard said that using the parents' description, they had located Manny rather fast. In the hopes of spotting something that might lead them to the youngster, they followed him on the video. To what location would he go? But once Manny left, he vanished from their cameras, making it impossible for the security guard to assist them anymore. Now that Carlos and Alyssa had exhausted all options from their isolated position, it was imperative that they return by air as quickly as possible. They purchased seats for the earliest available return trip, departing early the next day. They felt like they took an eternity to go back to the location where everything went wrong, even though they were exhausted when they boarded the aircraft. Alyssa received an unexpected call from her mother, but neither Carlos nor Alyssa had received any word from the police up to that point in the journey. "Manny is here," Grandma said, shocking everyone. Their son was at his grandmother's place, which astounded both parents. How was his route there? After going missing for 2 days, why did he finally turn up there? The parents sped up their car to go to Grandma's place. They stormed Manny's direction, breaking through the door. Alyssa felt a rush of relief wash over her, and she started crying as she held him. Breaking her extended hug, Alyssa turned to face her son with a stern but loving glance. "Have you been somewhere? You left the airport, but why? Tell me what happened, please," she babbled. The boy explained that when the pilots finished giving him the tour, he left the cockpit and was surprised to see his mother leave the plane. This confused him very much as he thought the plane would soon leave, so he decided to follow her. But before Manny could continue his story, Alyssa interrupted him. She was shocked to hear this. "I didn't leave the plane. How could you think that?" she said. Manny's answer only caused her to be more confused. Alyssa apologized to her son and, with newfound curiosity, encouraged him to continue his story. Manny explained that he was confused by his mother's actions. Why would she leave so close to the departure? There was still quite some distance between them, and Manny was slowly losing hope of catching up. He had screamed for his mother a few times, but she didn't seem to hear him. But then his mother suddenly stood still beside a trash can and seemed to put something inside. Now his mother was standing still. He could catch up, but she resumed her journey before he could reach her. Manny wanted to follow, but his eyes widened as he passed the garbage bin and peered inside. He muttered, "There has to be an accident here." He snatched up the object with speed and went back for it. He was eventually able to catch up with his mother when the chase took him out of the airport. Now that she was outside the airport and gazing around, she appeared to have slowed down. As he got closer, he cried, "Mom," but she didn't respond. Thus, he chose to take her arm. "What made you get off the aircraft? To what destination are you heading? How come you would discard this?" After the lengthy pursuit, Manny babbled to his mother, feeling a little out of breath. However, his breath stopped and his eyes widened as the woman turned around. This woman was a stranger. She wasn't his mother. He gave a throat clearing, saying to the odd woman, "You lost this." He gave it to her. But when the mother glanced at the flash drive in the boy's palm, her face eclipsed that of fear and confusion. Her eyes darted about furiously, and her face went pale. There was a brief pause before she quickly took off, thanked Manny, and grabbed the drive. Did his mother get off the aircraft at all? Seeking direction, he surveyed his surroundings. At this time, Manny's heart was racing, and he glanced at her nervously. The woman then took hold of his arm and dragged him along with her. "Come with me," she urged in a firm yet quiet voice. The woman was really anxious and was still searching around wildly. After a while, she got a cab to halt, and she pushed Manny inside. The child listened dutifully, since he didn't want to cause any more problems. But he summoned all his bravery once inside. He questioned, "What do you want from me?" "I wish to keep you safe. It's difficult for us because of you." "I was delivering information for my team as an undercover police officer," the lady said. She loaded important data onto the flash drive that she needed to distribute to her police squad. Manny took the drive with him, so she missed the scheduled drop-off at the airport. She noticed thieves observing the garbage bin as she attempted to return the disc. It's likely that the group she entered found out she was undercover and started hunting for her. Though she couldn't be certain, she didn't believe they noticed her. The undercover agent continued gravely, "That also means that they may be looking for you if they saw us together." After a while, Manny said, "I'm sorry," tears welling up in his eyes. She assured him not to worry, though. She would take him to a secure residence since every undercover agent was ready for situations like these. She assured Manny, "Nothing is going to happen to you," and he felt comfortable enough to trust her. When she got there, the woman alerted her police team, who showed up shortly after and responded right away. The woman showed the crew the contents on the flash drive when they were all together, and they were rather pleased. After that, the team talked about how their strategy would be a little different because they wouldn't have an insider and the woman's cover had been exposed. Nevertheless, they came up with a plan to invade the gang's headquarters after consulting one another. Thus, the group got ready and moved the following day. The undercover agent's extensive information made the raid successful, leading to the arrest of every criminal who was pursuing her and Manny. Because they didn't want to send Manny back to his family before they were certain it would be safe, the police took their time making sure every single member of the gang was in arrest. However, Once he was given the all clear, the woman offered to take him back to his family because Manny had assumed his parents would still be dead. "I came here because he begged the policeman to take him to his grandmother's house," he said. Parents couldn't decide what to say as they stared at one another in shock. They were relieved that he had returned home safely overall. Following that, the family made their difficult journey back home. Though things hadn't gone as planned, they still had a couple of weeks to kill. Thus, the family took advantage of a stay-at-home holiday throughout the next weeks. Please remember to subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our videos. If you enjoyed the tale, the next video that plays on your screen will probably move you too.